Well, hey, everybody.
Howdy.
Good day, and
Yes.
we're glad that you're here. Welcome to Let's Talk. We're glad.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Did I already say we're glad to be here?
Yeah.
So, Faith, you say God is good to you today. He cleared your schedule for Saturday. Praise God. And Faith put on here that everybody needs to go and sign up to serve at the pumpkin patch. And we really encourage people to do that.
Look at that. Thanks.
And so anyway, the pumpkin patch, just to give you an idea, Marcy just entered where you can go to sign up. The pumpkin patch provides resources for us to do missions in Ascension Parish, Baton Rouge area, the world. It's living water, so it's drilling water wells. It's
Open air ministry,
which is ministry for people downtown Baton Rouge. It is
domestic abuse
through Iris. It is
hurricane relief.
It's a multitude of things.
It's coats and socks.
I
mean, the list goes on.
And so we want to serve the people around us. We want to love them and care for them. And so Pumpkin Patch is a way to do that. And we would love for you to go sign up. And like I said, Marcy entered it in the comments.
Hey, can you do that really cool thing that you did just a few seconds ago? So
I think I can right there.
Put it like there on the screen.
Right there. Look at that. Look at that.
Spell it right. Okay, good.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Anyway, so as we start each day, we start with something kind of different. And today it is a day that represents a multitude of things. Like I'm sitting here looking at what today is.
Well, it's Wednesday.
It's Wednesday. It's National Emergency Nurses Day. So if you know
ER
a nurse, an ER nurse.
But in all actuality, all nurses, wherever they are, they're like on call.
Yes.
So they're emergency nurses all the time. Because 9 times out of 10, most nurses that I know will stop what they're doing to go help whatever is the call. There is
some truth to that. But today is International Day of Failure Day. Now I don't know if anyone can relate to that, but you get to celebrate your failure.
And that just segues into International Top Spinning Day. So when you feel like everything is out of control, that's okay. You can celebrate your failures, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And what it says is
that's not weird.
Failure is not something to be ashamed of, because everybody fails, right?
Yeah.
Everybody fails
all the time.
And so, so anyway, International Failure Day.
That's right.
And
which leads into very fittingly.
So today we're going to talk about marriage and
covenant marriage. Because we've been in that whole series of covenant relationship for probably the past 5 weeks now.
We have been.
And interestingly enough, we have just finished 7 weeks with 8 other very courageous couples walking through what's called the marriage course put out by Alpha USA. And it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
It was intentional time. So we're going to be sharing a little bit of that. It was, wow. Huge blessing. And after a lot of, or many years of marriage to you, well, you're the only one.
32.
It was
years.
Really good to revisit, if not learn anew or learn period of things that we can do to, as we just step into covenant marriage, which is a daily thing, making that choice.
Yeah. And one of the things that we heard, from people that were in the group is it was great to really have a refresher course, but for some it was the beginning of their marriage.
Absolutely.
And so it's for everybody. Just to let y'all know, we're probably going to be doing that again at the beginning of the new year in January. So just look for that. And we're excited about that. Hey Jim, it's good to see you. So what we want to do today is we want to take some of the principles that we gained from the marriage course, and we want to walk through those with you, because we're called to have a covenant marriage, not a contractual marriage, but a covenant marriage, because we're created by a covenant God as covenant people for covenant relationships. And so we're going to walk through 2 steps today And then we're going to come back.
And revisit the other 99. I'm teasing.
And then we're going to come back and we're going to do 2 more steps next week. Now, this is not a reason to not take the course, because the course has some conversation time and some building time between you and your spouse. And so
it's just you and your spouse sitting at a table. It's like a date night.
Yeah.
And one of the beautiful things about it is that, I mean, you're sitting next to each other. You have to discuss the things that you're working through on the book. And you're not like fleshing it out in front of a whole bunch of people. It is definitely just the 2 of you.
Yeah, you don't have to share your deepest, darkest secrets with anyone else except your spouse. Mm-hmm. And Faith put in here that it was great. They were in there. She and Troy were a part of it. And so the first step that they take you through is strengthening your connection. And it sounds really simple. It sounds like, why would we have to do that? We're connected. We're married
automatically.
Right.
Yeah.
But people who are married, I know a lot of people who are married who are not connected to their spouse.
I mean, there are many times, a few times in our marriage that, you know, you go to sleep at night and one's on one side of the bed and the other's on the other side of the bed. And you're just, for whatever reason, you're just not connected at all.
Yeah.
Because whatever's, you know, feeding into that. So connection
it may be conflict. It may be busyness. It may be frustration. It may be mental, emotional weariness, whatever it is. There are a lot of reasons that we're not connected. And so we want to talk about that. And one of the images that they use in the marriage course, which I really love, is the image of taking care of your vineyard. I love vineyards. If I could live anywhere, I would love to live in Napa, but I would love that. I would wish that it wasn't in California.
A vine taker.
Yes. Caretaker. So you take care of your vineyard. You take care of what God has entrusted to you, which is your marriage. Mm-hmm. And the first thing is you need to be willing. As I say these things, as I was writing these things down, I just smiled because we're like, yeah, that makes complete sense. But you need to be willing to adjust. You need to be willing to change. You need to be willing to say, okay, this is who I was when I entered into the marriage, and our marriage has moved in this direction. And so this is how I need to adjust. Now, the important thing is you adjust yourself. You don't adjust your spouse. And there are people in marriages that try to change their spouse, and that doesn't work. You can't change your spouse. You can only change yourself.
I mean, it's very much what we were talking about on Sunday too. I mean, if you believe that Jesus is Lord of your life and God created you in his image, then you also believe that you've been uniquely created in his image. And so although that the 2 are together in this covenant relationship, you're still very much uniquely created in the image of God. So you cannot change the other person from the standpoint of how God has created them uniquely in his image, but the 2 can grow together with those uniquenesses. And I think that's probably more about what we're talking about here in the strengthening that connection.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, those of you who are watching, have you ever attempted to change your spouse? Was there something about your spouse that you're like, it'd be really good if they were
picked up their underwear when they're laying it on the floor after they get into the shower or something?
Hypothetically speaking.
So basically you're also then saying it's not going to change.
Faith said she has tried to change her spouse and it doesn't work, does it, Faith? And so the first thing that we need to understand is I need to adjust. I need to adjust for her. I need to change. Not for her, but I need to change to become the man that God's created me to be, so that I can be for her who I'm created to be.
And we all know, as if you're a believer, that really, for fulfillment and for longevity, only comes through the power of the Spirit of God in you.
Right.
Because on your own, you cannot change. But what he requires from you is that choice to be molded by him.
Yeah, I mean, I can make some changes without the power of the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. They're not changes that are moving me into a godly way. So, yes. The first thing is your willingness to adjust. Your willingness to adjust for the betterment and for the benefit of your marriage. The second thing is to prune your life. And pruning is not pleasant. I mean, even in the sense of pruning a plant, you're cutting off a part of the plant. And so pruning in our marriages, pruning in our lives is cutting out parts of our life that don't need to be there, because we need to prioritize our marriage, prioritize our relationship above those things. And there are times that we have probably certain things that we really like to do, or certain things that are important to us. But there may be times that you have to prune those out of your life in order to prioritize your marriage, your relationship, your time, so that you can connect with them.
Right.
I talk to a lot of people that are married and they're just coexisting. One person told me, yeah, I'm like a roommate with my spouse. And so instead of being that, then we need to prune some things so that we can spend time with one another, and also understand, I mean, how Marcy needs to be loved is different than the way I need to be loved. And so I need to be willing to prune some things, to adjust some things in my life so that I can love her in the manner that she needs or wants to be loved, instead of the way I want to love her.
Yeah, and I think it's not only is it an individual pruning that takes place, but there's a pruning that takes place as a couple too. These things do not have priority in our lives. And, we're going to talk about that too, about dreams and visions and missions and stuff like that. But there are a lot of things that we need to remove from our lives so that our marriage can grow and thrive, not unlike what we should desire for our relationship with Jesus either.
Well, and the great thing about it, and Faith said pruning is hard. Pruning is hard. It's not pleasant all the time. But the great thing about it is the entire principle behind pruning is so that you'll be more fruitful. So the whole principle behind pruning your marriage is so that your marriage will be more fruitful, more alive, more abundant.
Right.
And so the pruning may be difficult, it may be hard, it may not be pleasant all the time, but the purpose of it is more fruitfulness. And so that's what we need to step into.
Right.
The third thing about connecting is supporting one another. And this, again, sounds so elementary, so of course, but it's supporting one another to the degree that you're considering them before yourself, that your desire is to please them more than yourself. So it's finding ways to support them in the things that are difficult to them, because for you, it may not be difficult. You may be at a place where your spouse is going through something and they're stressing about it and they're frustrated about it. And it's not really stressing you or frustrating you, but you need to support your spouse in that moment because it's real to them. That is their reality. That is the place that they are. And so you need to support them. And the great thing about support is as you support one another, it strengthens your marriage.
It does.
It strengthens the foundation. It very well may strengthen a part of your foundation that was breaking off. When we moved into our first house in Ruston, we found out that the foundation was broken. And so we had to put 11 pilings underneath, something like that to jack it back up. And there are some times that we need to support our marriage in a very strong way with these pilings of support so that it will jack the foundation back up so it'll be stable.
Mm-hmm. And that goes back to what we were talking about in regard to pruning as well. When you have to get to that point, when that support, if it's at that place, then there's probably a lot more pruning that needs to happen, which is, it can be very painful.
Yeah.
And that raises a question, and we don't need to answer this, but just think about it. Where are places that you find your identity? Are those the things that have to be pruned? Sometimes those are the things that really are almost the most painful because you find your identity in that.
And the support aspect is coming alongside or coming beneath and carrying the burdens of the other person. And so what are some places that you can presently support your spouse? And I see y'all, the ones who are on here right now, I know several of you are being supported by your spouse right now, or you're supporting your spouse right now. And there's usually an ebb and flow. There's a give and take. There may be a time where one is going through something difficult and you need to support them, and another one's going through something difficult and the other needs to support them. So it's a give and take, and it's a growth area in marriage. And so we need to support one another. And again, this is all under connection so that we can connect one another. Brenda, you just stated that you thank God for Norman because he's been there to support you through your surgery and through your recovery and through your healing. And he's a gift to you. And so, so we need to do that with our spouses. The next part about connecting is a perspective of renewal. And it's an idea of sitting down and talking about your hopes and dreams. And it doesn't matter how long you've been married or how little you've been married. You have hopes and dreams for your marriage. You have hopes and dreams as a couple. You have hopes and dreams. And there have been times that we've done this. We haven't done it as consistently as we should or as I like. But a great thing is at the beginning of the year, carve out some time. Carve out several hours to sit down and dream and hope together as a couple and talk about, did we accomplish, did we move toward any of our dreams in this past year? If not, what do we need to prune out of our life in order to get there? And it may be, if you have kids, it may be having to carve some things out for your kids, or it may be having to prune some things in your kids' lives for the sake of the family. And so it's stepping into that renewal. So it's not always difficult. It's not always frustrating. It's celebrating. Man, this is what we want to do. Marcy and I kind of jokingly in the last probably week, sit down and talked about some things that we wanted to do, some places we wanted to go, and just to dream with one another.
Dreaming's hard for me. And I think that sometimes these things sound like they're really easy, but it's not. And as a mom, sometimes as a nurturer, whether or not your children are still living with you or not, you have been doing and being who God has called you to be for such a long time. And that's who God has called us as females to be anyways. So I don't want anyone to think that dreaming is something that's an easy job. And I'm sorry, especially for a female. And not to say that men don't get it, but I think sometimes men don't get it. Is because it's hard because you have been so other oriented that to think about anything that involves you and your feelings and your thoughts, it can be hard.
And that's why you need to sit down together and dream, because it's possible that one spouse can say something that will stir something in you, or maybe you have said something that you forgot you said, and your spouse is able to remind you of that and kind of bring you back. And of course, it's not easy to dream because you get caught up in the morass of life, in the just the frustrations or the day-to-day things of life. And so you stop dreaming, and we need to continue to dream. The last thing is possibly start something new between the two of you. Try to bring something new and fresh into your marriage that both of you can gather around, both of you are excited about, both of you want to do, and then do it and step into it. And
I heard somebody suggest one time, so you do make that list of things you'd like to do, but it's not really a thing that you really like to do because you really like to do it, but it's a place of just trying. He might look at me and go, I really don't want to do that. That sounds kind of silly, but we do it anyways. And then we can go, oh, we're not going to do that. We're going to mark that off the list. Or, wow, that was very surprising.
So we did that one time.
He was rollerblading.
Well, we did
that too.
We did that too. That wasn't what I was talking about.
Okay.
That was hilarious to see the two of us rollerblading.
Especially when I fell into the bush. That was about 50 feet in front of me.
Yeah. And this is right when rollerblades came out. We didn't have a clue what we were doing. We were crashing everywhere. It was funny. I was thinking about golfing because
that too.
I really,
that one off.
I really enjoyed golfing.
Stupid little ball in an itty bitty hole you can't even see.
But Marcy hates golfing. Jim, you said camping, and y'all
love camping.
Y'all just got back from that, and I hope you were refreshed from that. But it's finding that one thing that you can both gather around, you can both celebrate, you can both be excited about, And I got to be honest with you. We haven't been really intentional about that. And as I was preparing for today, I was thinking, God, that's something that we need to do. And again, all these things.
Axe throwing. That's my next one. It's
axe throwing. If anybody wants to go axe throwing with us, you can go with us. Just as long as she throws it at the wood and not at me. So it's important for us to do these things so that we can connect. Connection is vital. It's not only vital for us as a couple, it's vital for us in our relationship with Jesus. And I firmly believe, and I've experienced this, if my relationship with Christ is good, then my connection with Marcy is so much better. And so stay connected to God, continue to press into Jesus, continue to pursue him, continue to learn about him, love him, learn from him, and then bring that connection to your spouse. The second thing is we need to learn how to communicate. And communication, a lot of people have different perspectives of communication. And so we're going to walk through some principles that were brought out in the marriage course that we believe in. And so the first is this in regard to communication: share your feelings and your thoughts with each other. Y'all, this is not easy. We live in a world that we keep everything close, and we're careful, even with our spouses, even with people who have committed to love us till death us do part. We keep those things in. So the first thing is it's difficult to share your feelings and your thoughts sometimes. I'm glad y'all are working on that, Faith. It's just difficult to share because you're afraid. You're afraid of what they're going to think. You're afraid of how they're going to respond. But another aspect that's difficult in sharing your feelings and your thoughts is we don't have a feeling vocabulary anymore. We don't have words that really communicate feeling. A lot of times you'll ask people, you're like, well, how are you feeling? I'm angry. Well, what are you angry about? And it's moving beyond that initial secondary emotion to really what's going on underneath. And we got to work at this, and you actually have to practice this, and you have to come up with words, and you have to, we've got a page of feeling words that we could send you, and it's practice, and it's sitting across from your spouse and saying, I'm feeling this, but I really don't know how to articulate it. I don't know what I'm feeling, but it's stepping into that and committing yourself to that.
And one of the things I want to speak to this, one of the easiest things to do is to say if he asks me, well, how are you really feeling? And maybe I've not fleshed it out yet, and which is typically me in a lot of things because I don't have the actual words I feel like or I think to identify what's going on inside of me. So, man, easy place to go is, I don't know. And that's always has been my go-to. I don't know. But I would encourage each of us to somehow, in our communicating with one another, to be able to look at your spouse and go, I don't know, but I need to think about this. And please remind me, and let's come back to it.
Yeah.
That does a lot of things for your ability to communicate with one another. Namely, it helps to get that out of your head and spend some time journaling it. And then you have a partner with you who is going to come back around to the I don't know response so that you can look at it more authentically and work through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the important part of that is to make it a regular practice. One of the things that they recommend, one of the things that we've encouraged people to do is find a date night and set aside a certain number of hours to say, for a period of time in these 2 hours that we're going to be together, we're going to talk about what we're feeling, what we're thinking. And as you come back to it every week, then you're able to put words to it. Or as Marcy said, you've had time to flesh it out. You've had time to think about it. And so this needs to be a regular practice. It needs to be something that you put in your schedule. And I wrote that in there, schedule time for this to happen, that you can sit across from one another, talk to one another, and share those feelings. The next thing is learn to listen. We don't listen well. In fact, there's some research that indicates the average person only listens 17 seconds before interrupting someone. I mean, think about how damaging to communication that is. It's to only listen to someone for 17 seconds and then you're processing. I mean, you're not even listening because you're processing what you're about to say, what your response is going to be to them. And so, yeah, thank you. That was a slow 17 seconds. So we want to walk through 5 steps to reflective listening and how to really listen to the other person. The first is this: you try to put yourself in the position of the person communicating with you. You try to understand, and you're not fully going to understand that because I'm different than Marcy. Marcy's different than me. But you try to gain some understanding of why they're saying what they're saying and why they're feeling what they're feeling. And you're not going to know that fully and completely, but you step into that and you try to position yourself in understanding them.
And one of the things that they suggested is simply by having something that you can pass to each other. So if Scott wants to explain something to me, then he holds the cup or whatever it is. And when he is done and I have really been listening, then he can give me the cup.
Oh,
and then I can kind of go back through some of these questions because now I'm going to ask him and respond.
Yeah. So that's the first thing, is try to put yourself in the position of the other person. Then the second one is acknowledge what they have said. Affirm what they've said. I mean, speak to the fact that something came out of their mouth, that words came out of their mouth. Because here's what normally happens. Somebody says something, the other person's processing what their response is going to be. Mm-hmm. And so when the person's done talking, they don't really respond to what was said. They respond with what they wanted to say. And so it's important to affirm what the other person said, to validate, oh, I heard you. I know that you just said something. It was important to me that you just said it. And now I want to respond directly to what you just said. But affirm that, validate it, and acknowledge that they just said something. The next is what I just said. It's affirming what they said.
Right.
It's saying, oh, well, I just heard you say this, or is this what you meant to say? And so it's important to affirm that. The fourth is to ask questions to make sure you're hearing them correctly. A lot of times there's miscommunication. Sometimes if in conflict, one speaking with a lot of emotion and a lot of energy, they may not be communicating as well as they want to. And so it's important to ask the question of, is this what you said? Because this is what I heard. Just making sure that you're understanding. See, the point of communication is, if I'm speaking to be understood. And if I'm listening to understand. The whole point of communication is understanding. And so it's important to ask those questions, to clarify, and to, in the asking of the questions, you're telling them that it matters what they just said.
That they matter.
Yeah.
I mean, I struggle with that because I process it I'm processing in my head, and I may not respond. That comes out, okay, I hear what you're saying. Even with I'm processing right now. I know it's hard to believe, but there's a lot of times that I don't open my mouth because I'm processing, and I process in a completely different way than he does.
Yeah. The next is find out what's most important to them. Ask them, okay, so what is the most important part of what you were saying? So I can respond to that, because you may respond to something that you hear that you think is important, but that's really not the important thing. So ask them the question. So what's the most important part of that? And then the next step is, I believe, one of the most important questions we can ask one another, which is, what do you need me to do? Because there may be a time where we're having a conversation and she says something and I really don't know how to respond, or I may not fully understand it. And so to ask the question, so what do you need from me? Then that may bring her to the point of being able to say, this is what I need. Even in misunderstanding, with that question, what do you need from me? Then she can potentially articulate, this is precisely what I need.
Or, I just need you to listen to me. That's it.
Yeah. She said that to me the other day. She said, I don't need you to say anything. I want to share this. And I said, okay. And so the last point in regard to communicating is ask if they have said everything that they want to say. At some time, there are times when communication happens that someone begins talking, the other person responds, and something may have been said that just locks them down, that they put a wall up and they're like, I'm done. So to ask them the question, have you shared everything you want to say? Because I want to hear. That's important to me to hear what you have to say. I know early in our marriage, I tried to win the argument. I tried to win the discussion. And there were times that I would jump in and it would shut her down. And that's not what I want at all. I want to communicate. And so this is important to say, okay, have you been able to share everything that you want to share? Because there may be some other things, there may be some things that come up as you respond that they may think, oh, I need to say this as well. So give them that space to share what they need to share. So those are the first 2 points. The next one is resolving conflict, and the fourth one is forgiveness. And we're going to talk about those next week. Actually,
2 weeks.
2 weeks from now.
The week after.
Because next week on Let's Talk, we're going to talk about sex. Because Sunday morning, we're talking about sex. And, and I think there's some people that are experiencing a little discomfort with that idea.
It's way more than just what everybody's thinking. So
right.
It's way more. So one of the things that tell them what you want people to do, to submit questions where?
Yeah, we would love for you to submit questions. You can submit questions on the website. You can submit questions to our text and church phone number, of which I didn't put in here to put up on the screen.
Or just email those questions to newsongcommunity@gmail.com.
Yeah. And on Sunday morning, we're going to give you a card and you can write down your questions, but we're going to answer those questions about sexuality, human sexuality, from a godly perspective instead of from a world perspective. And so we're going to do that on Sunday morning. We're going to talk about it because it's a part of covenant relationships. And then on Let's Talk on Wednesday, we're going to talk about it again and answer the questions. So we would love for you to ask questions about sex, about the role of sex in marriage and the role of sex in the world and what the world says versus what Scripture says. So we hope that you'll join us for that. The last thing that we want to say is we have the pumpkin patch going on. It's going on really well right now, but we need workers. We need volunteers, and we would love for you to participate in that. And so again, you can go to our website and you can go and register to serve in the pumpkin patch. And then we want to invite you to worship. We want to invite you to come to Newsong. If you're new, if you've never been, we would love to welcome you 9 o'clock and 10:30 in person and online. And we would love to see your face.
Amen.
So that's the first part of essentially the marriage course and covenant marriage. And so we're going to be coming back around and talking about it again in 2 weeks, the last 2 points. We would love for you to share this with your Facebook friends, with your friends, point them in this direction and let them come and hopefully be challenged on how to strengthen and grow their marriage.
Absolutely.
So until we see you again, we love y'all. We thank God for you. And we pray that you are pursuing him because he's pursuing you and he is desperately in love with you. And we will see you soon.
Have a great day, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.